Hello, this is a introduction video on how to get started with ArduPilot aerobatic scripting. So aerobatic scripting is a way for ArduPilot to fly complex aerobatic maneuvers, complete sequences and air shows using a Lua script. And we're going to be demonstrating it using the built-in simulator first. Then in another video, I'll show how to get started with using the real flight simulator. All right, so you'll need the very recent version of Mission Planner. So if you haven't done it recently, then go and check for beta updates here. You need the version of Mission Planner as of about the second week of November. So if we go back, we can now get started with setting up simulations. We're going to go into the Simulation tab up here, and we are going to choose the Plane 3D model. Now, if your version of Mission Planner doesn't have the Plane-3D model, then you need to update it. And so the Plane 3D model is just a version of the simple built-in plane simulator. The difference is that it has very large control surfaces and plenty of power, which means it's capable of doing 3D maneuvers. So that's why we're going to be using it for this. So I'm going to initially wipe my parameters. So I'm just going to start from scratch. This is just to ensure that for this demonstration that I'm not using any preset things. You can see it all from scratch. And I'm going to run a speed up of, say, 5 times. So run a little bit faster than normal real time. We can do that with the built-in simulator. We can't do that with the real flight simulator. All right, so let's go and start up our simulator. And we're going to use the latest development version of ArduPilot. So it's downloading the latest version. Now it's starting up. And we're connected. All right, so we have a plane sitting on the runway here, ready for us to give it some commands. So we've got to go into the config for this aircraft, and we've got to set up a few things. First of all, let's just check that Lua scripting is enabled. And we can see that the default in the Plane 3D model is that it does have Lua scripting enabled. It's got a large heap size. This aerobatics uses a lot of memory, so you need a nice big heap size. About 250K is fine. That also works on real H7 based flight controllers. About 100,000 of the VMI count. So we have our basic Lua scripting set up. Great. So I'm also going to go and change the limb roll CD. I just want to be able to bank really hard for missions, so I'm going to set that as 70 degrees. I've actually got a pending pull request that'll make that the default on plane CD, so you won't need to do that if you're watching this video as of a couple of days' time. So we've written all the parameters, great. And so the next thing we need to do is go and fetch the Lua script that we're going to need, because we're going to be placing this Lua script into the right folder in the simulation so that ArduPilot can do aerobatics. So what we do is we go to github.com/ArduPilot/ArduPilot. That takes you to the main repository for ArduPilot. And you navigate your way down into libraries. Then we want the AP scripting. Let's wander down to AP scripting. Down here somewhere. There it is, AP scripting. And we're going into applets because aerobatics is considered a scripting applet. And within that, we want to go to the aerobatics fixed wing. And there's the Lua script we need. Now, while we're here, I'm also going to open up the documentation because you're going to need this documentation later, because this documentation tells how you can set up, complete aerobatic sequences. So, but we'll just keep that to one side, and we're going to download this little Lua script. Right, so we'll grab that, and I'll just go into RAW. And I'm going to save as and I need to put the Lua script in Documents, Mission Planner, SITL, Plane 3D, which matches the type of aircraft that I launched in the simulator, and a subdirectory called Scripts. So we need a Scripts directory, and within that Scripts directory, and we need to fix the file name. It needs to end in .lua. All right, so there we will now have a Lua script. If we pop in and check this directory, and we check Documents, Mission Planner, SITL, Plane 3D, Scripts, there we have ourselves a Lua script of type Lua file. Excellent. So now what we're going to do is we're also going to download this trick72.txt. Now, that one is one for later on in this, as I'm giving you this tutorial. And this is a complete air show in the format that you can create yourself. So you can create your own air shows with all sorts of elements in them. And so I'm going to pop in there and download that one as well. So save it as in the same directories, and we're going to call it trick72.txt. So we go to assign an ID number 72 to this script, and you can create your own. You can create, 69, 86, whatever number you like, and then you can assign that, and you have it on a switch, and you can do complete aerobatic sequences on a switch that way. So we're going to save that one for later use. Okay, great. So now we've got our basic files downloaded. You might go and have a read of the documentation here, but I'm going to forge ahead and start flying. So we will need to restart scripting. We've just added the Lua script, and you can either restart the simulator, or if you want to save yourself a bit of time, you can do this scripting command, stop and restart, like that. Okay, so scripting has now restarted. Fantastic. So we're all ready, and we've got ourselves these Lua scripts. Now, once you've restarted scripting, let's go and make sure we've got all the parameters. In the full parameter list, if I look for trick enable, you'll find that I've now got this parameter trick enable, right, which is then set to 0 at the moment, and we will later on be enabling this when we are doing tricks on a switch. But for the moment, what I'm going to show is how to set up an automatic mission to run a sequence. All right, so we've got everything we need to go to start planning our first flight. So here we are sitting on the runway, and we're going to start adding a few waypoints in here. So I'm just going to click around the basic form of the waypoints we want. So we want to, do a takeoff, and then maybe come over to here, and then we want something that's about parallel to the pilot's box. This is where the pilots normally stand at this flying field, and then coming down here, and then I might come up here and then come back and land there like that. And so that's our basic sequence. I'm just going to write that one. Now I'm going to change the first one to be a takeoff. All right, and I'm going to take off to say 20 meters. And then next waypoint I'm going to make, say, 40 meters. And again, 40 meters. And then I'm going to make all of these 40 except for the last one, because it's a great tradition of aviation for the landing to be at 0 meters. So we're going to put a landing waypoint last there. All right, so there we have a very simple mission. I'm going to shift this takeoff waypoint around a little bit, move that down here. It really doesn't matter where the takeoff is, but you can move it around a bit. It doesn't want to move it as a takeoff. All right, doesn't matter. The takeoff, where the takeoff is, really doesn't matter. Okay, so we've got ourselves a basic sequence. Now what we want to do is we want it to take off, fly up here, then as it's coming south, just as it's crossing this waypoint here, we want it to do its first simple aerobatic maneuver. And we're going to set it up so it does a loop right there, just in front of the pilot's box, so the judges can see it nice and clearly. All right, so what we need to do is, first of all, we're going to change waypoint 3, this one here, to have a small acceptance radius, say 1 meter. What that means is it will come all the way up here regardless of your waypoint radius. All right? Then what we're going to do is we're going to add a new waypoint below here. So we're going to go add below, and number 4, we're going to make it what's called a script time. So script time is the aerobatic scripting done in auto missions. And this is where we refer to our documentation, and we can see all the different commands we can do in a script time. We're going to do a very, very simple loop, and we can see a loop takes 3 arguments: the radius of the loop, the bank angle, and how many loops. So we're just going to do a simple 30-meter radius loop. So the command there, if you looked at the docs, it was ID number 2, that's this. So we're going to put a 2 there in the command column. Great, there's our command column. And then the radius, we're going to say a 30-meter radius with no bank angle and 1 loop. All right, so we've now got script time, and it's followed this pattern from the documentation: loop, radius, bank angle, num loops. So the argument 1, radius; argument 2, no bank angle. We're not going to do a knife edge loop, for example. You could put that as 90 for a knife edge loop. And number 3 for 1 loop. So, and there we go. Okay, so we're all ready to go on our first flight, and so we'll go into actions, or just make sure the mission's restarted, pop ourselves into auto mode, and then we will arm the throttle and see what happens. And there it did a loop. Great. So we've now done a loop, and we're coming back, and we're now landing, and a bit of a wonky landing at the end there. The ground steering's not really set up very well at all in this plane, but I really don't mind at the moment for this. Okay, so we've got ourselves our first loop. So let's go and have a look how it did. So what we're going to do is we go to this site here, plot3d.ardupilot.org. So that's our little 3D viewer. And we're now going to load a bin file, and we navigate to Documents, Mission Planner, SITL, Plane 3D Logs, and we go to the latest log, which was written right now, and we load that. It's asking us what type of schedule and things. This is for putting the aerobatic box in place. We're just going to use generic, and it's automatically recognized that we're flying at CMAC, so we just go, go, and lo and behold, we have ourselves a loop. All right, so now you'll notice that this actually it's showing 2 loops. And you might wonder why it's showing 2 loops. Well, the reason it's showing 2 is the default, it's got this option set called Show Actual, which means it's actually got 2 paths recorded. You'll also notice it's only showing the aerobatics. That's the current behavior of Plot3D. The aerobatic scripting has its own logging system, which it adds to the ArduPilot logs, and it only shows the aerobatic maneuvers. We do plan on expanding this to show general waypoint missions as well in 3D, but for the moment it's just showing aerobatic missions. All right, so the reason it's 2 loops is one of the loops is the desired path, what's called the target path, and the other one is the actual path, what the aircraft actually did. And you can see here, if we go play, right, there's the desired path. It went round twice, right? So it goes around, so we'll just reset it back to the beginning, and then we'll go again, and goes around first time, second time. Great. So it did these 2 loops. The first one was the desired path, and the second one was it actually did. So you can see that the loop wasn't perfect. It was nice and round, but it was just slightly larger than it wanted to be. And that's just, there's lag in the servos. There's a little bit of filtering going on. That's expected. It's not going to be perfect. All right, but it is darn close. Okay, so we've got ourselves the first very, very simple loop that we've done. And so now we're going to do a little bit trickier sequence. So what I'm going to demonstrate is doing an aerobatic sequence. Now, we can do aerobatic sequences by placing waypoints all over the place, and in the plan having different script time ones for different for where you want to do a loop or a barrel roll or whatever. But what we're going to do instead is, I mentioned that we had this little Trick 72 that we downloaded, which is a canned air show. And let's go and have a look at this. So it's got some comments starting with hash, and then it goes on, and you can see that it starts with a loop. So nice simple loop. We're doing a 25-meter loop with no bank and one loop. Then we are doing what's called a straight align. That's aligning within the maneuver space. So aligning along the axis that you started the sequence. And 0 means right at the point where you started the sequence. 80 means 80 meters ahead of where you started the sequence. Minus 80 would be 80 meters behind. And basically it flies ahead until it's past that point. If it's already past the point, it doesn't do anything. So this can be used to align maneuvers within the space. So then we're putting out a little message. These message things just print a message on the screen, and then we're doing a half reverse cubanate with a 25-meter radius, right? So that's a half reverse cubanate there and just takes a radius, okay? So then we're going to align, then we're going to do a scale figure 8, then we're going to do an Immelman turn, a roll, a split S, a rolling circle, a Humpty Bump, a half cubanate, a barrel roll, which is the latest addition to our scripted aerobatics tricks. This is a 30-meter radius, 100-meter length, 2-spiral barrel roll. Very proud of that one. Then we're doing a procedure turn, and finally we're aligning back to the start. So the way we use this Trick 72 is we have it in that same documents, mission planner, SITL, plane 3D in the scripts directory, and we've got this trick72.txt, which you can go and edit and change all you like to change the maneuvers. Now, what this does is if you reference command 72, it will parse and load this script. So that'll work off your micro SD card on your real vehicle, or it will work on in SITL. So we're going to be doing it in SITL. So we're going to just change this to command ID 72. All right. Now we don't actually need any of the arguments because these complete sequences don't take any arguments, so we can just blank those out. It wouldn't do any harm leaving them in. So that's now saying we want to do sequence number 72. And so I'll write that. Great, so let's go back and we will take off again. We'll restart the mission and we're in auto, so let's arm the vehicle. All right, off she goes, and it's going to start doing a loop. Then it does a half reverse cubanate. Then it does a scale figure 8. We've got this 5 times speed up. So very good for designing things to have a nice high speed up so that you can, look at what it looks like for when you want to tweak it a little bit. And then it's a Humpty Bump, background there to a half cubanate, then a 2-spiral barrel roll, off to a procedure turn, and back, and we're done. Finishing the super air show. All right, so let's go and see how it did. So let's look at our flight plotter, and we will load a bin file. So this is now number 28, and it should have been up to, I might not have refreshed that. So there should have been a 29 there, and that doesn't, there it is. Okay, great. All right, so we've now done a complete air show. So that means that with that simple command there, right, with that simple mission, we just needed to say do number 72, and it does that complete sequence. And we're now doing this rather nice looking air show. So let's pop in here and have a look at some of the features of this. So what we can see is that we're starting off from over here. We're doing a loop. We're coming over a half reverse cubanate. and we can actually play it through. So we can do the loop like that, and then we're coming back here, we're doing a scale figure 8 like that, and then we're doing Immelman, then a roll, and then we're doing, there's the Humpty Bump, and we're coming back, and there we're doing there's a barrel roll and a procedural turn, and we're back at the beginning. And then it goes through a second time to show the actual path it did. Remember, it shows the target path, then the actual path. And so there's it doing the rolling circle and the Humpty Bump, and there's the Cuban 8 and the barrel roll, and down to a procedure turn and back, and we're done. All right, so there we have it. We've done a complete aerobatic sequence. We could now go and edit that, that text file to try different sequences, and you can play with them to your heart's content. We were going to show doing it with tricks on a switch. All right. So you can also do this with tricks on a switch. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to set up in the config back here the trick enable. So we've got to set trick enable to enable tricks on a switch like that. Great. And we're going to need to restart scripting now so that it gets the, so that's scripting stop and restart like that. Great. And enable 3 aerobatic tricks. Okay, so we're going to refresh our parameters and go to the full parameter list. And this is now going to be trick. All right, so we've got trick, and we go to set trick 1 ID, and let's do trick 1 ID. We can set that to do the same trick. That's 72, the full air show. So we have an air show on a switch. Maybe we'll do something simpler. We'll do something like a, how about an Immelman turn? All right, so let's go and add an Immelman turn on. So that is, there's 2 types of Immelmans. We're going to do the ordinary Immelman turn, which is type 15 that just takes a radius. So we'll put that as command 15, and we have to give trick 1 arg1 for the radius. 30 meters is fine. So we're going to do a 30-meter radius Immelman turn, and we're going to write that. There you go. So that's all we need. And so now we have to set up a selection function and a selection switch and an activation switch. All right, so what we need to do is we will need to either have a joystick or we'll need to have RC inputs. So let's first of all, write those parameters, and let's see if we can set up a joystick. So what we will need is in setup, optional hardware joystick, and let's see if it can find, I've got this Interlink Elite here, like that, and I'm going to set up a few channels. So I say set up channels, say, I don't know, 6 and 7. So let's see what we've got here. So that's channel 7 on this knob. So I'll use this knob here, if I can show that. So that knob there to act as the trick selector, right? So that's channel 7 is going to be our trick selector. And then there's a 3-position switch, which doesn't appear to be activating anything. That is a bit annoying. Right, okay, so this one here does not activate these with a 3-position switch. Well, what we can do is do the selection on channel 7, and then we can actually use the new function in Mission Planner to activate the activate auxiliary functions using a button. All right, so let's set up, and we'll enable this Interlink Elite, and we're going to go and set up with the trick setup, and we need to go and set RC7 RC7 option is going to be our selection, which is 301 if you read the documentation. So nice little bit of documentation here on how to set this up, but you'll find that you'll need to set up a selection knob that selects which of the tricks you want to activate. And we're going to do that on number 7. So there it is. Great. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back into our data screen, and we're going to go across to this handy new auxiliary function, and we're going to set this first auxiliary function as scripting 1, and then we can set low, middle, and high on that. So if we go, we turn it off, mid, and then high, we'll activate that trick. And if we move this knob around, then we've now got trick 1 selected, Immelmann turn. So just by moving that little knob, that's trick selection knob, we're now on Immelmann turn is selected. All right, so now what I'm going to do is go and go into actions, and I'm just going to use takeoff mode. So I'm going to pop it into takeoff mode somewhere here. There it is, takeoff mode, set mode. And we're going to arm throttle just to get the aircraft in the air. And RC3 is not neutral. Yes, I don't have my sticks neutral, but that will do. All right, so now we are flying in takeoff mode. I'm now going to put it into a loiter. All right, so there's a loiter, and it's now in a loiter. And I'll actually pop it into cruise mode, I think. And so let's go into cruise mode, and then what we'll do is we'll go to the auxiliary function, and scripting 1 will go high. And we're now doing an Immelmann turn. So each time we activate that, if we put it back to the middle position, selected Immelmann turn, we select again, and whoosh, we've now done an Immelmann turn. We're flying in the other direction because it's a turnaround maneuver. So it's each time you execute it, you turn around and go the other way. So there's our Immelmann turn. So we've now got that on a switch. Normally you would put it on a RC switch, but you can use that auxiliary function if you need to. And we can go and have a look at what that looked like. So we force disarm there, go back and have a look at the flight plotter. And we will now have a look at this next one. And there we are. So we've still got because we haven't rebooted, we've still got the path we did previously, which was the trick 72. And now we've done all these Immelmann turns. And each time we do an Immelmann turn, we gain height. Because an Immelmann turn not only is a turnaround maneuver, it's also a maneuver that gains height. And in this case, it gains 60 meters because we had a radius of 30 and it goes 2 radiuses high. So you can see we flew along here in cruise, and then it flipped up here, then we flew along there, flipped up there, and it turns around each time. So there you have it. We have tricks on a switch. We have a auto mission flying a full air show, and that should get you started. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you will get a lot of pleasure out of flying aerobatic scripting in ArduPilot SITL.